Chapter 117 of Shrimadbhagavatam. Vashishta hosts the king. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Pururavas had 6 sons, the eldest of whom was Ayu. His descendants were Nahusha, his son Yayati, and after Yayati Puru. The later kings were more famed as Pauravas. Vijaya was the name of the youngest son of the Pururavas. Vijaya was the father of a son by name Bhima. Bhima's son was Kanchana and his son was Janhu, who later swallowed the river Ganga when she rushed in tumult following Bhagiratha. Janhu's son was Puru and his son was Balaka. Balaka's son was Ajaka. Ajaka had a son by name Kusha, and Kusha had 4 sons, the youngest of whom was Kushanabha. Gadi, the father of Satyavati, was the son of Kushanabha. Gadi's son was Kaushika, later more famous by name Vishwamitra. Kaushika was a very famous king. He ruled his subjects well, and he was reputed to be a very good king. Once, he had gone to the forest with a large army. He was visiting several places. He visited cities which were ruled by him, and in the course of his journey, he saw many beautiful rivers, hills, and ashramas nestling at their sides. One such ashrama was that of Vashishta, the son of Brahma. From a distance, Kaushika could see the flowering trees and shrubs, and he could see the orchards. And there was a small stream flowing slowly past the ashrama. Several deer and other tame animals could be seen, and the king was surprised that Siddhas, Charanas, as well as Gandharvas and Kinnaras could be seen in the spot. The place resounded with the music made by the birds, which had nests on the trees, and there was nothing but peace reigning there in the ashrama and in the forest surrounding the ashrama. On going nearer, the king saw several rishis performing tapas, and there were many who were bent on meditation and who seemed lost to the outside world. It seemed to him that Brahmaloka, of which he had heard, was not in the heavens but here, on the earth, where Vashishta was. It is a rule among Kshatriyas that they should not pass the ashrama of a rishi without paying respect to him. In return, the rishi welcomes him and honors him, since the king is said to be Narayana himself. Kaushika entered the ashrama of the great Vashishta and prostrated before the rishi. Vashishta was very pleased to see him and welcomed him with great joy and excitement. He sent for a seat noble enough to befit a king, and he made Kaushika sit on it. He then offered fruits and water. Kaushika received all this with the humility befitting a great king, and they spoke to each other about general things. Vashishta asked the conventional question which should be asked. He said, "I hope you are well. I am sure your subjects are happy under your rule, which I am sure is very righteous. I hope your servants are well behaved and obedient. Are all your enemies subdued, and is your army large and powerful? Is your treasury full? Are your children well and happy?" Kaushika answered them all in the affirmative, and in his turn inquired about the well-being of the rishis and the inmates of his ashramas, and if they were able to pursue their tapas without disturbance from wild animals and such. Each had great respect for the other, and they spent a long time talking to each other about many things. After a long time had passed, Vashishta said, "I want you to accept my hospitality. It is a rare honor that you have visited my ashrama with your army. I want to entertain you. You are a righteous king and a good man. I am pleased of doing so." Kaushika was greatly touched by the words of the rishi. He spoke humbly and said, "Your words full of affection have done more than a feast can do. You have already given me fruits and milk. The sight of you has made us pure for birth after birth. What need is there for you to entertain us? You are the person who should be honored as a god, and it is not right that you should say, I am to be honored. I will soon be taking leave of you to continue my journey. Kaushika felt that if would just embarrass the rishi to feed so many of them, and to save him from this, he rose up very tactfully as if to go. Vashishta would have none of it. Again and again he insisted that the king with his retinue should accept his hospitality. Finally, Kaushika had to accede to his request and said, So be it, my lord. You are so eager to play host to us, and I do not have the chance to escape from your goodness. They laughed together and they walked out of the ashrama. Vashishta called out, Surabhi, child, Shabhele, come here at once. Kaushika was wondering whom he was calling, and even as he was thinking about it, a beautiful cow came and stood before Vashishta and said, You called me, father? Kaushika saw that the cow was beautiful. She had a lovely shape and her hide was mottled black and white. Her eyes were soft and gentle. Vashishta said, Shabale, listen to my words. This is the king of this country and his name is Kaushika. He has come with his army and I wish to entertain him and his retinue. Prepare for them a feast with all the necessary things. Let there be nothing lacking and I want them all to go back satisfied. Hurry and create everything. Shabale was Kamadhenu, the divine cow which rose up out of the ocean of the milk when the Devas and Asuras churned her for Amrita. She had been given to Vashishta. She created a feast for the royal guest and his attendants. There were drinks of all kinds and food of every kind, to suit every palate. There were heaps and heaps of all edibles they could think of, and the guests were served with affection and care so that everyone had his fill of food and was satisfied. Kaushika was extremely happy and he saluted the rishi with his ministers and commanders. He then said, My lord, never in my life have I tasted food like the one I ate today. I want to ask a favor of you. I was greatly impressed by the power of Shavala, your cow. A cow such as she should be in the possession of the king of the country. Bounty like hers should benefit everyone. Please give her to me, and in return I will give you 100,000 cows. This cow is a jewel, and any precious jewel should rightfully belong to the king. I want her. Please give her to me. Vashishta was taken aback by the words of Kaushika. But he composed himself and softly said, I hate to refuse anyone anything, but Shabala is something different. Not even in exchange for 100,000 or 1,000 cows will I give my Surabhi. You may say that you will give me heaps and heaps of silver and gold, but it will be of no use. I will not part with Shabala, and that is certain. Kaushika stood as though he was stunned. Vashishta's eyes were now wet, and he said, O king, Shabala is part of me and she cannot be separated from me. It is like trying to part the fame from the man who is famous. All my religious rites are performed because of the gifts of Shabala. I cannot give her to you. Kaushika would not give up. He said, I will give you 1,000 elephants fully caparisoned in gold and silks. I will give you 800 horses and chariots. I will give you more than all that if you so desire. I will give you 1 crore of Kapila cows. Please give this one cow to me. If you so desire, I will give you gold and precious stones without number. Vashishta shook his head sadly but firmly and said, No, she is my wealth. She is my everything and she is my very life. My tapas is all comprised in her. What is the use of dilating on the subject? I will never part with her, and it is useless on your part to offer me wealth. I have no use for any of the things you mention. I have Shabala. She is mine and she will be mine forever. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 118 of Shrimadbhagavatam. A frustrated king. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kaushika was a Kshatriya and his anger made its appearance. Never before had he been balked in his desire, and he had set his heart on getting this wonderful cow. He became very angry and he walked out of the ashrama. He commanded his servants to take the cow by force, and they led her out of the shed. She thought to herself, "Why has the noble Vashishta abandoned me like this? What have I done that he should punish me? The servants of this king are dragging me away from here, and my father has not done anything about it." She was crying and her tears were falling fast. Her sighs were audible, and she told herself, "I will go to him and ask him why he has allowed this insult to me by the king's servants." Suddenly she broke away from the hands of her captors and ran with the speed of wind. She reached the presence of Vashishta. She fell at his feet and said, "Father, why have you forsaken me? Even as you are looking on, these men are carrying me away. Why do you allow this?" Vashishta said, "Child, you have done no wrong and I am not punishing you. I will never forsake you. This king is powerful and is dragging you away by force. This army of one Akshohini is his, and hence he thinks he is invincible. This is why he has asked that you should be taken by force." Shavala said, "But my lord, what is the power of a king in the presence of a Brahmin? Brahma Bala is far superior to that of a Kshatriya. Your greatness is unequaled in all the several worlds. Kaushika is powerful, no doubt, and a great Kshatriya. Give me permission, father, to show him that even a weakling like me, when blessed by you, can be more powerful than he is. I will punish his arrogance and humble his pride." Vashishta looked at the cow, whose breath was coming in gasps. She was so angry. Her eyes had become red and her tail was lifted up in anger. Vashishta smiled at her. He stroked her back and said, "All right, I grant you permission. Create in a moment an army which can tackle the king's army." Surabhi just shook her body and there appeared a huge army. Hundreds of warriors appeared and they went to fight with the king's army. Finding his army being defeated by the one created by a mere cow, Kaushika, with his eyes red with anger, entered the fight and fought with the army of Surabhi. When she saw the valor of the king and the way he was destroying her army, Surabhi created more warriors to join the fight. Even as the army got thinned out, Surabhi kept on creating more and more. Kaushika was now joined by his sons and they all fought together and they attacked Vashishta himself. The Rishi with a hunkara burned them all, and only a heap of ashes was what remained of the sons of Kaushika. The king was heartbroken. His army was gone and his sons were dead. He was completely beaten. He was like the ocean without its power, like a serpent with its fangs pulled out, like a bird whose wings had been clipped. His pride was gone and his face was like that of the setting sun. All its fierceness had vanished. Without a word, with his head bent, with his eyes trained on the ground, Kaushika left the ashrama of Vashishta and went back to his kingdom. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 119 of Shrimadbhagavatam. Kaushika's Tapas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kaushika's anger was unappeased, and his thoughts were always hovering around the humiliating defeat he had had at the hands of the cow's army in the ashrama of Vashishta. He was disgusted with everything and he made his son stay and mind the kingdom. He then went to the forest. He went to the slopes of the Himavat where the Kinnaras were, and he performed a great tapas for years together And Mahadeva, satisfied with the devotion of Kaushika, appeared before him and asked him, "Why are you performing this tapas? What do you desire? I will grant you whatever you desire." Kaushika, prostrated before him and singing his praises, he said, "My lord, if you are pleased with me, then grant me the boon that I am proficient in archery. Grant me that I am the master of all the divine astras. Please grant me these." Shankara said, "I have given them to you. Go in peace." Kaushika went back to his kingdom. His self-respect had been restored, and with it, his pride came back. It had grown tenfold now. He told himself, "Vashishta the Great is as good as dead. How can he withstand the astras presided over by the gods? I will destroy him and bring that cow to my kingdom." Kaushika went to the ashrama of Vashishta, and without warning, he began to dispatch the astras one after another. The birds and the tame animals which were in the ashrama ran out of it in panic. The disciples of the Rishi, who were living there in the ashrama, were also scared by the sudden harassment, and they fled from there in fear. The ashrama and its surroundings were now as bare as soil, which is salty and so fit for nothing. There was silence reigning there, and Vashishta's anger was roused. He told himself, "For no reason at all, this king is troubling me again and again. I will destroy him like the sun burns up the snow." He came and stood before Kaushika and said, "This peaceful hermitage has been destroyed by you, and I am very angry with you. You do not seem to know anything about propriety, and you are, I am afraid, a fool. I am going to kill you." He lifted up his staff, which began to glow like the fire which burns bright without smoke at the end of the yuga. It looked like the staff of Yama, the Lord of Death. Kaushika was not frightened by his words, since he had had the divine astras with him. He invoked the astra presided over by Agni, the god of fire. Vashishta hurled his danda at Kaushika and said, "So, you have come to challenge me with your divine astras? Let me see your prowess. I am here standing in front of you, and you show me what you can do. Let us see if your Kshatriya Bala is great, or if my Brahma Bala is. You fool, you are a disgrace to the Kshatriya clan to which you belong. You will now see the superiority of the divine powers of a Brahmin." The astra sent by Kaushika was rushing towards Vashishta, spitting fire. When it touched the Brahmadanda, which the Rishi had placed in front of him, the fire was extinguished like when it is touched by water. Kaushika then sent the astra Varuna, Raudra, Aindra, Pashupata, Aishika, and his brows were knit with anger and frustration when he found each one of them swallowed up by the Brahmadanda. Manavastra was sent in vain, and Gandharva, Jrumbhana, and Swapana. Even Vajra, the astra presided over by Indra, which had killed the great Vritra, even that proved ineffectual. Kaushika then sent the Pashas, Kala Pasha, Varuna Pasha, which tied up Bali in the days of old, and Brahma Pasha. The chakras and these were followed by many other astras reputed to be invincible. Not one of them were capable of doing anything to Vashishta, whose Brahmadanda was planted firmly before him. The Devas were assembled in the skies by now to witness this glorious scene where Brahmabala was proving itself to be greater than other powers in the three worlds. In despair, the king sent the great Brahmastra, and everyone was watching its progress. Even that followed the same path as the others. Vashishta was now glowing like the god of fire, and every pore in his skin was spitting fire. The Brahmadanda was resplendent like fire without smoke. The rishis from the skies and from all over the heavens proclaimed, "Your power is the greatest power we have ever seen. You are capable of bearing any of these fires with your own glory. The great King Kaushika has indeed been vanquished by you. Please abandon this anger and let not the world suffer because of your wrath. Vashishta accordingly calmed himself, and his Brahmadanda too became cool. As for Kaushika, he threw down his bow and arrow, and with a long sigh exclaimed, Fie on this bala of a Kshatriya! The only bala worthwhile is the bala of a Brahmin. With his mere staff, this Brahmin has been able to hold at bay all the astras which had been given to me by Mahadeva. I have decided that I will perform tapas so that I will become like him, equal to him in bala. And that will be Kshatriya bala. I will realize Brahmatva with my tapas. Kaushika's heart was full of diverse feelings. His heart was sore with the defeat he had met with at the hands of Vashishta. His sighs were like the hissings of an angry serpent which had been beaten with a stick. His hatred for the Rishi was also immense. With so many emotions raising in his heart, Kaushika proceeded towards the south and began to perform tapas with intensity. His desire was to become a Brahmarshi. Years passed, and yet he was absorbed in his tapas. When 1,000 years had passed, Brahma, the creator, came to him and said, Kaushika, your tapas has been so intense that we in heaven are very pleased with your concentrated effort. You have achieved what seemed to be impossible. You will from now be known as Rajarshi Kaushika. Having granted the boon to Kaushika, Brahma went back to Satyaloka. Kaushika, however, was not as pleased as he should have been. On the contrary, he was very unhappy. His grief was intense, and so was his frustration. He wanted the world, and he was granted a fistful of sand. He told himself, after all these years of tapas, I have been called a Rajarshi. I feel that I have not done enough. I will try again. And so, Kaushika persisted with his fearful tapas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamast. Chapter 120 of Shrimadbhagavatam, King Trishanku of the solar race. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In the dynasty of the sun was a famous king by name Trishanku. He was a good king and very, very righteous, as all the kings of the race were. All on a sudden, the king was filled with a strange desire. He wanted to reach the heavens with a human body. He approached his guru Vashishta with this desire in his heart and asked him to perform a yajna which would help him achieve this end. Vashishta refused, saying, This is an unnatural and impious wish on your part. I cannot help you to reach the heavens with this body. Trishanku was sorely disappointed. He renounced his throne and travelled south. There, he met the sons of Vashishta and asked them to help him gratify his desire. They were 100 in number, and they had performed tapas for several years. They were rich in tapas. Trishanku, when he approached them, saluted them with reverence, and standing with folded palms, he said, I have surrendered myself to you. I am the king whose guru is your dear father. I request you to perform for me a sacrifice which will make me reach the heavens with this human body. Guru Vashishta, the famed, refused to help me and asked me to look for someone else to do it for me. I have no one else but the sons of my guru, and so I have come to you for help. Rich as you are in the wealth of tapas, I beseech you to help me. It has always been your ancestors who have been the preceptors for the line of Ikshvaku. You are like gods to us, and you should grant me my prayer. The sons of Vashishta were very angry with the king. They said, You are very sinful and stupid. When our father has refused to perform a sacrifice, saying that it is against all dharma, how dare you approach us with the same request? Vashishta has been your Kulaguru. He has advised the kings of your line ever since Ikshvaku ruled the world, and he has disapproved of your desire. He has told you that it is not possible to do such a thing. How then do you expect us to do something which our father has not sanctioned? You are indeed childish in your desire. Go back to your city and resume your kingly duties. We are not prepared to insult our father by taking up your cause. The king was very unhappy at their reply. He said, if my guru refuses to help me and his sons too, what am I going to do? I have only one course open. I will go in search of another guru who will grant me what I desire. Vashishta's sons were furious with him. They could not brook the insult to their father and to themselves. They therefore cursed him and said, you are a Guru Drohi. From this moment you will become a Chandala. Having cursed him, they returned to the ashrama. The unhappy king returned to his city with his heart heavy with pain and disappointment. When the night passed, the king found that he had become a Chandala. His clothes were black and his skin, which was once golden, had turned black. His neck was adorned with wild flowers, and the ornaments of gold which he had been wearing had turned into crude ones made of iron. When he entered the city, the people jeered at him, and they could not recognize him. Even his ministers were unable to believe him when he told them who he was. He was chased out of the city by the citizens who made fun of his appearance. Trishanku thought for a while and decided that there was one person who would surely help him. He had heard so much about the intense tapas which Kaushika, the king, had been performing, and about his becoming a Rajarshi because of his tapas. Trishanku hurried towards the spot where Kaushika was absorbed in tapas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.